Because maybe the first 2, 3, 4 sessions you will come and just relax. But after that, you began to engage in a process of interwork, as I like to call it. And sometimes it catches people by surprise. Always for the positive and always at the rate that people want to go, however. But the other day I had a client come in and she said, you know, I've realized how much doing this work has changed me. And she said, the other day I was on my way home from work and I thought, I really want to go out to dinner tonight. And she said, so I started playing in my mind, well, I'm going to call my husband and I'm going to tell him that I'm going to stop at the grocery store because we don't have anything in the house. And I'm going to say it in such a way that will prompt him to suggest that maybe we go out to dinner. And if he doesn't, then I'm going to say this. And if he responds this way, figuring it out. And she said, all of a sudden I thought, why am I manipulating the situation? Why don't I just call and say, you know what, I want to go out to dinner? And she said, you know, I thought there is really no reason except then I'm being demanding and then we have to take responsibility when the credit card comes and I say, why did we go out to dinner? Well, you wanted to. And she said, you know, a year ago, I would have played out that whole scenario. I would have thought it up in my mind. I would have made the phone call. We would have gone out to dinner. And she said, I would have thought absolutely nothing of it. I would have never thought that I was being manipulative or that there was another way. And she said, it came to me, it's that damn Reiki. It's making me self-aware. And she said, and you know, I don't think I can put that back in the box now. You know, I now have this level of self-awareness that even if I wanted to say, oh, I'm going to stop going to Reiki, I'm not going to think like that anymore, I now have stirred up my inner workings. I now understand myself a little bit. And so I'm now accountable for that. Well, I think that's a very kind of tame example of what this is all about understanding ourselves, understanding our interactions and our reactions and our actions in a way that brings it to light, that kind of cuts through everything down to the core. And I think that's the example that Jesus gives us in is going out into the desert, finding the place to examine the self, to find union with God, and to face the devil or temptation. You know, I had fun. Whenever I'm going to preach, I Google. And I Google, like, homily, first Sunday of Lent, to see what comes up to maybe get some ideas. And so the sermon ideas for the first Sunday of Lent are really very interesting, because there are some people who take the devil to extreme. And I thought, well, that would be a good idea. Bishop Craig may have to have a stern talking to me after that homily. Me and the secretary. But, you know, that whole concept in the scripture of what is this encounter that Jesus has in the desert with the devil. And the devil is understood in the Hebrew text often as kind of like God's friend or God's like colleague in, like, for example, the wisdom literature, like Job. It's like God and the devil are someplace having fun and they decide, let's see who's right, like a divine contest. And the devil said, oh, I will tempt Job, and God says, no, Job won't respond, and they kind of play it out. Well, some of that is coming to light in this reading with Jesus in the desert. This image of the devil as a person that tries to get one to go away from God, or tries to see how far you can go. And so, and the other image of the devil is similar to it, but more of like the enemy of God and kind of the person challenging God. And so it's this idea of kind of wrestling with the questions of life and of purpose. And I think of it sometimes as like my woman, my Reiki client, of taking the easy way. When we start examining what we want out of life, what our purpose, what we feel our call is, I think sometimes there are shortcuts that we could take through manipulation or through pretending or through all sorts of different ways of trying to achieve through cheating, maybe trying to achieve what we want out of life, but not really putting the work in, just kind of really cheating, getting what we want through some way that is not doing all that we can do. And I think that's even part of the other image that lends to Lent is the Israelites in the desert for 40 years. Now, Scripture scholars tell us there's absolutely no way that the Israelites spent 40 years in the desert because they didn't have to go that far. They would have to go in circles over and over again for it to be that long. And so what does the 40 years mean? It is a time period that exemplifies almost like the shifting of a whole generation. You know, the people that left Egypt and that were the adults that had all of this memory of being harshly treated and being slaves, who would have all of the anger and fear associated with that, are, you know, pretty much gone by the time, or very old and would have forgotten by the time they enter the promised land. And so it's kind of like a fresh start, almost like letting go of all of that pain from being slaves in Egypt. So I think that is part of the desert experience too. It's letting go of things and being refreshed for our journey. And so during Lent, let us reflect deeply in ourselves to examine our motives, examine where temptation and sin may be holding us back or may be motivating us to live in a way that is more authentic and true. There's a quote from Miser Eckhart. Let's see if I can remember it. The outer work can never be small if the inner work is great, and the outer work can never be great if the inward work is small. Our outside work immediately corresponds with what we do